Order the Monday, June 24th meeting of the Verona Common Council. Will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll call. Ms. Lynch, please.
Alderperson Bear.
Here.
Alderperson Diaz.
Here.
Alderperson Doyle.
Here.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Here.
Alderperson Reekie.
Here.
Alderperson Steiner.
Here.
And Alderperson Yurs.
Here.
And Alderperson Manley is absent and excused this evening.
We have a quorum, so we will proceed with the agenda. The next thing on the agenda is public comment. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak this evening, if they would please come forward to the podium. There should be a sign-up sheet there, and if you desire to speak, if you would state your name and address for the benefit of us and for those watching at home. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak this evening? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing no one, we will move on then. Excuse me, I've got a bad cold. We will move on with the agenda. Next, we have oath of office for City Council appointee. Mr. Mike Bear has been appointed to the Common Council. And Ms. Lynch, if you would swear him in, please.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michael Bear,
Having been elected to the office of Alderperson District 4,
having been elected to the office of Alderperson District 4,
swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So we have one absent this evening, but we are back to a full council. So Mike, welcome to the body.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of the minutes from the prior meeting. The minutes have been included with your packet. What is your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion by Alderperson Doyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Diaz. Were there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. Under Mayor's business this evening, committee appointments, I would ask for your consideration the appointment of the following. Mr. Bear to serve on the Personnel Committee, the Public Safety Committee, and the Ethics Committee. And also, I have asked Alderperson Doyle if she would chair the Personnel Committee. So I ask you for confirmation of those appointments.
I move to confirm.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Steiner. All those in favor of confirming the appointments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you both, Mike and Elizabeth, for that. Also, we have one more vacancy to fill. This is on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we fill this vacancy, and then all city committees and board positions have been filled. I would ask for your consideration John McCulley to serve, it's a new term for the Zoning Board of Appeals. John McCulley, 509 Ashton Drive, and I would ask for your confirmation. We have a motion. A question, go ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit?
Mr. McCulley has lived in the city of Verona for a number of years. He currently serves on the school board as well. He has expressed an interest almost as soon as he moved to the city of being involved in the city. So I had the opportunity. I asked him, the most recent time I saw him was at Hometown Days at the parade, and talked to him, and he said he would be honored to serve the committee. Mr. Yurs.
I just want to say, I know John personally. He's also a constituent of mine. A great guy, great family, and I know he'll do a great job.
Just wondering if there's any other people, if there were any other
At this point, there was no one that specifically asked to be on the zoning board of appeals. The city has received other applications and names of people that are interested in serving, but we had no one that expressed an interest in serving on the zoning board of appeals. And as I mentioned to Mr. McCully, I can't remember how many years it's been since the zoning board of appeals has met. It's been a long time, but it was a foot in the door. So, Mr. Yers.
I move to confirm Mr. McCully's appointment.
We have a motion by Mr. Yers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. All in favor of confirming the appointment of John McCully to the Zoning Board of Appeals, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. And the city will send out letters then to Mr. McCully, or a letter notifying him. That concludes my report for this evening. We'll move on to the administrator's report. Mr. Burns, please.
Yeah, thank you. A few updates this evening. First of all, the State Assembly and Senate have approved the next biennial budget. That now goes to the governor's office for vetoes and potential signature. The Dane County Cities and Villages, in their weekly update, has some additional information on provisions in the budget and recent amendments that was emailed out to the council earlier today. As the budget's finalized, we'll be working on analyzing the fiscal provisions in the budget and that impact on the city as we start work on the city's budget process for the 2014 budget. For the downtown project, the next public meeting will be a visioning session that is tentatively planned for Monday the 29th, which is the 5th Monday of July. We are still working on getting a particular agenda for that meeting and a start time, but it would be intended to be an evening meeting. We're working with consultants from MSA, and the focus of this meeting would be to look at character and redevelopment issues rather than the transportation issues, and try to focus on a common vision or themes for what people would like to see in the downtown. We're also working on an online survey that could go out in preparation for that meeting to also provide people another opportunity for feedback if they're not able to attend the meeting. The city has released a request for proposal for architectural services for the fire and EMS facility based on the earlier version that was reviewed by the ad hoc committee, and we discussed briefly at the committee of the whole. Proposals are due back around the middle of July, and then that would go to the ad hoc committee to make a recommendation to the city council for potentially awarding a contract for the architectural design services. We've had a conversation with representatives from EPIC. They've indicated that they are intending to bring forward initial review of their food service building at the August Plan Commission meeting, and they're continuing to work on plans for their Campus 4 development. That will likely follow 1 or 2 months behind the food service building, so potentially for the September or October Plan Commission meetings. And then just wanted to remind people that with the July 4th holiday, City Hall will be closed on Thursday of next week in observance of the holiday. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burns? Seeing none, thank you, Bill. We'll move on then to the engineer's report. Mr. Gunlock, please.
Thank you. Several items this evening. The first is the Cathedral Point Phase 3 construction. The contractor has completed approximately 90% of the sewer and water construction. That work should be completed this week if the rain holds off. Storm sewer construction is scheduled for next week. All of the site grading work has been completed. Contractor will commence street construction as soon as the storm sewer is completed. The 34 or 5 lots that are in this phase should be completed by August 1st. 2013 street rehabilitation project. Contractor has completed all of the concrete replacement work in the Eastview Heights neighborhood, or will complete by tomorrow. They will also start street pulverizing on Fairview Terrace and Woodlawn Way tomorrow, and proceed to the other streets as the week goes on. Once the streets are pulverized, the grading will commence. Thompson Drive, Mark Drive, and Melody Circle are also slated for paving tomorrow, if the weather holds. All work for the 2013 street rehabilitation project should be completed by the end of July. Lincoln Street Culvert, as you can see, the road has been detoured. Contractor mobilized equipment today and will start work tomorrow. The actual box culverts should be here by the end of the week. They'll start installing, and this project will continue until mid-September. Epic Lane, Northern Lights repaving. Epic is slated to pave a portion of Northern Lights Road in the vicinity of the farm campus entrance tunnels this coming Saturday. They're also planning to reconstruct Northern Lights from Northern Lights Trail to Milky Way, and that work will start either this week or the beginning of next week. Epic Lane will be pulverized, reshaped, and repaved. The road is going to remain open to traffic, but if you use it, expect delays, and you'll be down to one lane at times. You'll also be traveling on the pulverized asphalt material. If you can stay out of the area, it would be well. Epic water main work. Epic has been relocating water mains in preparation of the start of the campus floor work, and the majority of those water mains have been completed. And finally, well 5, well house and reservoir. Contractor has completed the concrete pours on the walls and the roof. Mechanical and electrical work is now taking place inside the building. The reservoir will be filled with water either this week or next week to run the leakage test, and this project is scheduled for completion by August 31st. That ends the report for this evening. If there's questions, I'll try to answer them.
Are there any questions this evening for Mr. Gunlock? Not seeing any. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
We'll move on then to committee reports. We'll begin with the Finance Committee. Mr. McGilvray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 10A1, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the monthly bills in the amount of $1,364,316.13.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the way of explanation, two of the larger items from this month's bill, first being to Hammersley Stone, Inc. For materials and pay request for our road rehabilitation project. That amount is $159,978.39. The second one being rather large, to J.H. Findorf and Son, Inc. For AIA's Verona Well number 5. It's $945,045. Excuse me, $945,455.
You have heard the explanation of the major expenditures. Are there any questions for the Finance Committee or for city staff? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve the payment of bills in amount totaling $1,364,316.13. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 10A2, I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-13-022 terminating TIF District Number 5 and authorizing the city treasurer to distribute excess increment to overlaying tax districts.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. From the memorandum circulated with your packet, tax increment district number 5 was created in 1997 and encompasses the Bruce Street Industrial Park. The last date to incur project costs was July 13th, 2005, and the mandatory dissolution date is July 13th, 2020. At this time, the TIF district has generated sufficient increment to pay the remaining debt obligations, and the district may be terminated. Termination of the district will provide $13,628,000 of additional value to the city's non-TIF tax base. Upon completion of the final audit of the district, the city treasurer will distribute the balance of funds to the various taxing jurisdictions. The projected final balance available for distribution is $211,156.
You have heard the explanation of the purpose and intent of the resolution. Are there any questions for the Finance Committee or for city staff? Seeing no questions, all those in favor of a resolution R-13-022 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 10A3, I'll make a motion that would accept the 2012 audited utility financial statements.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, from the memorandum you received with your packet, on June 24, 2012, the city's utility auditors from Baker Tilly Virchow Kraus made a presentation to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee reviewed that document with Virchow Kraus, and we would recommend at this point that you accept that.
You've heard the explanation, and again, for an audit, we accept the audit, we don't approve an audit. So we can't change what the auditors have done, so I will try and point that out every year. So we accept audits, not approve them. Are there any questions on the utility, audited utility financial statements? Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the 2012 audited utility financial statements signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Is there anything else from the Finance Committee?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray, but we will go to you next for Public Sewer and Water Committee. Mr.
Thank you.
McGilvray.
Thank you. Under 10B1, I'll make a motion to approve change order number 2 for well 5 pumping station and reservoir in an additional amount to the contract of $79,636.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. The reason for the change order is for the following. Provide imported fittings for the large diameter interior particulate grooved pipe system in lieu of domestic fittings, and delete a mechanical coupling on the 16-inch buried water main for a deduct of $10,350. Revise design conditions for well pump base on well performance testing for a deduct of $9,431. Remove unsuitable material beneath the building foundation and replace with granular material. This is an add of $89,490. Revise orientation of overflow piping as a result of the change to the orientation of the retaining walls, and revise orientation of fittings and pump room to provide head clearance. Also, retaining walls were revised due to the unsuitable subsurface materials. This is an addition of $2,437, and provide overtime on Saturdays to make up for lost work days due to extremely wet weather during April 8th through April 11th of 2013. 9 Saturdays were worked, and the city will pay for an overtime premium for 4 of the Saturdays to help meet the overall tight construction schedule. This is an addition of $7,490. Again, the net result of the change order number 2 is an additional $79,636 to the contract amount, which brings the total contract price with previously approved change order number 1 to $3,153,450. We do have Mr. Gunlock and Mr. Reeder here who can answer if you have any specific questions concerning the unsuitable material that was below the well.
Do we have any questions for city staff or for the Public Works Committee? Ms. Ricky?
If other people have questions, I'd love for them to ask them too, but I just want to say that I had a lot of questions because it seemed like a big ticket change order to me. So I went out to the well pump site today and got my hard hat and everything and talked to a number of people out there from different realms of the project, and a lot of them directed me back to Mr. Gunlock and Mr. Reeder to answer my questions, which they did. So I am very comfortable now with this approving this change order.
Thank you for those comments. Other questions or comments?
I should say that the Public Works Committee did review this and recommended approval unanimously.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion before you is to approve change order number 2 for well 5 pumping station and reservoir. The change order is an additional $79,636. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. Under item 10B2, I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-13-023 approving a temporary roadway easement for the Northern Lights Road. This is subject to some modifications that were identified during the Public Works Committee. Those modifications are to Exhibits A and B, which should be attached to your agreement. We do have City's counsel here, Mr. Brian Kleinmeyer, to address any questions that people may have concerning the exhibits.
You've heard the explanation. We had a motion, but not a second at this point. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a second. Mr. McGilvery, anything to add, or Mr. Kleinmeyer?
I think at this point it would either be better for Mr. Kleinmeyer or Mr. Burns, probably Mr. Kleinmeyer, just to address the modifications to the agreement. The agreement is pretty straightforward, as you see. The changes to the map, I'll let Mr. Kleinmeyer address.
So if you turn to page, well, I guess it's 7 of the documents, maybe 8, Exhibit B, it's the portion, it's the map that has the yellow on it, the yellow road. The changes that are going to be made to Exhibit B, and then also to Exhibit A, which lists the legal description of the property. The purpose of the change is based on some preliminary plans that have been provided to the city. The southwest section of the road, while the work is being done, is going to be a little bit wider, essentially for Epic to be able to put in the new Northern Lights Road. They're going to have to modify the current Northern Lights Road. And that's the purpose for the change in the 2 exhibits. And again, Bill's memo describes the purpose for the easements. The new Northern Lights Road is going to be constructed. We need the current Northern Lights Road to continue to act as a public street until the new road is done, because people need to be able to use it. That's the purpose for the easement.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinmeyer. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Kleinmeyer. Are there questions or comments from the council? Mr. Diaz?
I'm just wondering if you could repeat your opinion on whether people with a potential conflict of interest at Epic should be voting or discussing this topic or not.
Sure. So I was asked to prepare a letter on that topic and to provide it to the city administrator. I did that. I shared my opinion. The opinion in the letter concludes that essentially, as a result of the size of Epic and applying some of the ethics rules, that I still think that certain people, and I'm just going to use the term employees generally, employees of Epic should be able to vote. That at this point there is an ethics board opinion that has been issued by the Government Accountability Board, which is a Wisconsin state agency, which would say that any employees of Epic should not participate in any action before the Common Council on that involves Epic. I believe that letter and that Bill has sent that letter to the Government Accountability Board. They are currently reviewing the issue, but my personal opinion to you and to anyone else who is an employee of Epic is, until the Government Accountability Board issues a new opinion that would allow you to participate, my recommendation would be that you do not participate.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from the council? Mr. McGilvray?
That being said, I would like to mention that Mr. Diaz, given that the council's advice, did recuse himself on 2 items this evening that concern Epic. The one that was not would have been the one that we just took action on, and that is a city facility, and even though it relates to Epic, he certainly, his voice should be heard on it.
Thank you. Further questions or comments on the motion? The motion before you is to approve Resolution R-13-023, approving a temporary road easement for Northern Lights Road. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Is there anything, Mr.?
Can the record reflect my abstention as well?
Yes, both. We'll do that. I'll make it on my notes here as well. Yours. Mr. McGilvray, anything else from Public Works, Sewer, and Water?
Okay. Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kleinmeyer. We'll move on then to old business. First, we will have a report on the appointment of the City of Verona Fire Chief and authorization of the compensation level for the position. I'll ask Mr. Burns to provide some background, please.
Yeah, at their meeting on June 18th, 2013, the Police and Fire Commission met to consider the city fire chief position, and at that meeting voted to authorize the appointment of Joe Giver as chief of the City of Verona Fire Department. That appointment would be effective on July 1 of 2013 at a part-time capacity for the purposes of transitioning from the fire district to a city fire department, hiring subordinates, and establishing the city fire department. And then that would become a full-time appointment effective January 1st of 2014. During this interim period from July 1 of 2013 until the end of this year, Joe Giver would continue to serve as the chief of the fire district fire chief, and then would transition into the full-time role as the city fire chief. The president of the Police and Fire Commission, Delora Newton, is here this evening and had asked to address the city council to provide a report on the appointment process that the Police and Fire Commission went through, as well as to address the recommended compensation for that position.
Ms. Newton, if you would, please.
Thank you, everybody. Yes, it was a unanimous decision from the Police and Fire Commission to appoint Chief Giver as the first fire chief in the city of Verona. We also talked a little bit about the compensation. I know that when the council agreed to hire a chief for the city, you set the compensation at $75,000 a year. And we talked about that. We looked at some comparables for surrounding communities, and Mr. Burns made a recommendation to us that given the size of our department and given the responsibilities of the chief, that perhaps that compensation should be increased initially a little bit of up to $80,000. So that is our recommendation, to go up to 80. Now, I say this, you know, in all due respect, because there's a unique relationship between the Police and Fire Commission and the City Council when it comes to hiring personnel. We are the body that makes the hiring decision, but you are the body that sets the compensation and the benefits for that position. So even though we appoint the chief, we can only recommend on the salary increase. I realize that you have a lot of people that work for the city that you need to consider, and that you will be discussing budgets later this year for 2014, and he doesn't really start until 2014 full-time for the city. So we do respect that you have those things to keep in mind, but we did think it was important to let you know that we had reviewed some comparables.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. Are there any questions for Ms. Newton or for Mr. Burns? Mr. Yurs?
I'm sorry, just so the final recommendation is 80,000?
We said up to, because again, we wanted to give, you know, this body the latitude if you wanted to set it at 80 or if you wanted to set it at something less. I mean, we don't have that authority. So our motion that we passed was up to 80.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, just to provide a little bit more information. Included in the council packet is information on fire chief compensation comparables that was put together and is one of the items that was reviewed by the committee. In addition, we took a look at the positions within Dane County and looked at them in a similar format to how we have looked at other city department head positions, as well as took a look at where our other city department heads fall. And based on that analysis, average of the comparables within Dane County came in at just about $79,000 in 2013 dollars. So I think that was part of the rationale for looking at this potentially up to $80,000 for a January 1, 2014 start. I think that would be consistent with how we've approached other positions and fit in well with the city's pay structure for department heads. Again, ideally, as we look at this, we've tried to look at it as part of the budget process and look at multiple departments at once. However, with this appointment coming mid-year, the commission felt that it was important to look at it, consider it, and make a recommendation to the council at this time. The council has previously authorized, as Ms. Newton said, up to the $75,000 level, as well as benefits consistent with the city's standard benefit package. We've started work on a draft employment agreement that would be consistent with other employment agreements we've done for other department head positions, and again, those benefits would be consistent with other positions. So I guess the question before the council this evening would be whether or not the council would authorize the additional compensation up to the $80,000 level. As it stands, the authorization is at $75,000, but that's an item available for your consideration this evening.
So we have a recommendation from the Police and Fire Commission, and Mr. Burns, your recommendation would be what?
Recommending compensation be authorized up to $80,000 annually for the fire chief position.
Mr. Yers.
I would just like to say I support the recommendation. Verona is a growing city, and as we get forward, I want to make sure that I'm very pleased that they taking a look at the comparables, and I want to make sure that we stay within those ranges. And so I just want to say I do support the PFC's recommendation.
Mr. Steiner.
Thanks, Mayor. Is this recommendation going to start on January 1, 2014, or will it have an immediate effect?
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, that would be effective January 1, 2014.
Thank you.
You have heard the recommendation. At this point, we do not have a motion on the floor. Is there any proposed action from the council? Ms. Doyle?
I agree that it would be more ideal to see this, more into the budget session, but I also agree with the recommendation of the commission and would make a motion to approve this.
At the up to 80,000, we have a motion by Ms. Doyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Yers. We are open for discussion on the motion. This would be to authorize the compensation for the chief up to $80,000. Seeing no questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Thank you for that. I think it was an excellent recommendation coming out of the Police and Fire Commission, and I support it as well. Next, we have a report on a potential impact fee for fire service facility. Mr. Burns, if you would provide the background, please.
And I'm just going to send out a handout while I give some background on this item. When the city and town of Verona began discussions about a potential new fire facility, there was also discussions about establishing a fire impact fee, which would be a collection from new development to help pay for a portion of the cost of that facility associated with the new development. We also have impact fees in place that help finance the cost of the library as well as the police portion of this facility. Baker Tilly was hired as a consultant to do a study on the fire impact fee. Vicki Hillenbrand is a partner with Baker Tilly who's been working on this project for the city. This had been put on hold for a while there was discussion about the potential transition to a city department, as well as doing some additional space needs and cost estimate analysis on the fire facility. And at this point, we have asked Baker Tilly to work on updating their calculations based on a city department with a new facility. And Ms. Hillenbrand is here this evening to provide an update on the status of the study and talk about what the next steps would be.
Ms. Hillenbrand, if you would, please.
Hi. So this evening, I just want to give a brief update on impact fees for folks that might be watching at home, might not understand what those are about. I want to talk a little bit about the process of how to implement a fee, and then I want to go through tonight that handout that we just gave you, just talking specifically about the fire fee. So impact fees have been in place since 1995. It was through enabling legislation, and that legislation was asked for by the developers. And the developers wanted to ensure that any development fees had a cost basis behind them, and they also wanted to ensure that schools were not charged an impact fee. So that's sort of the reason behind it. The developers asked for it sort of in the first place, to sort of ensure that there's good legal basis behind any of your fees. So that said, there's a lot of rules that we need to follow related to impact fees. And that's part of the process that we'll talk about tonight. Just to back up a second, the impact fees are really established. The reason why cities adopt impact fees is to ensure that your existing residents don't bear the burden of the cost of development on your community. So as you look to build that new fire station, you're going to oversize that station to handle the capacity that you need for growth over, the next 10, 20, 30 years, as that bricks and mortar lasts a very long time. And you don't want your existing residents to have to bear the burden of paying for the full cost of that facility. So impact fees are really designed to split the cost of that facility between what's here to serve existing residents and then what is here to serve future residents. And then as those residents move in, you charge them an impact fee when they pull a building permit, and that helps pay their fair share of the costs of that facility. So that's the basis behind them. As Bill said, you currently have fire and police impact fees. You also have a water impact fee, I believe, and a sewer connection fee. So those are the types of development fees that you have in place. For a growing community, that's in line with other communities, and based on the fees that you have in your community, I don't see anything out of line compared with other communities too. In fact, they're fairly conservative, and the fire impact fee that I've prepared for you tonight is also fairly conservative compared to the average. The process for impact fees, first I said that there's a law that's on the books, a statute that really describes how you calculate an impact fee. And Wisconsin impact fees are quite strict compared to other states in the nation. And it needs to be based on certain assumptions. And those assumptions, because the fire station for you hasn't been built yet and hasn't even been formally designed yet, they need to be watched. So I'm giving you an impact fee that you could adopt soon, in the next, after you have a public hearing, but then you just need to watch it and update it for any of those assumptions to change. The impact fees, after you sort of set a fee level based on certain assumptions, which is what I'll go over with you tonight, the next step is to develop a needs assessment. So that's basically an impact fee report that gives just more written dialogue behind the spreadsheet that you have today. That needs assessment needs to be on file with the city for 20 days before you go to public hearing. And then you have a public hearing to get input from the community. And at that evening you could approve an impact fee. And then it could be effective based on when you choose to implement it. It could be shortly thereafter. You could phase it in over time. Because your impact fee will not only want to have the city approve it, but you also need the town to approve it, because the impact fee is really designed to have both, communities that are in the service area collect that fee. And your agreement with the town does, anticipate all of that. And so the structure is in place for both of those. So tonight I want to talk to you a little bit, and I think the things I want you to think about as we go through the spreadsheet is, how do you feel about adding a fire impact fee, the necessity of it given the facility that you're looking to build. How comfortable are you with the assumptions that are in there? Again, I think they're fairly conservative, and the fee is fairly low compared to the other communities that I've done impact fees for fire. But I just want you to understand that if those assumptions change and the fee were to decrease, you would have to refund the difference back to the existing homeowners. Now, given that you have a pretty short runway from the time that you'd implement the fee until the time you actually go to build, I don't think that would be a problem. I just want you to be aware of it. And again, that refund would go back to the existing homeowners at that time. So record keeping would be important. I think you do a nice job of record keeping for your current impact fees, so I don't see that would be a problem either. And then how do you feel about the level that we're presenting tonight? You could always go lower than the level that we're presenting as well, and then the timing. So with that said, if there's any questions just on those sort of generic items, otherwise we can move right on to the spreadsheet.
Are there any questions for Ms. Hellenbrand right now? One of the things that I was going to ask, but you already stated it, was, or not going to ask, but have you explain, was that we don't have to, as a city, we wouldn't have to go to the highest amount. The costs, we couldn't exceed any actual expenditures or actual expectations, but we wouldn't have to go to the full amount of what the fee would be charged. And then we're restricted as to what we can use it for, but you'll be explaining that.
Right. So any impact fees that are collected need to go into a segregated interest-bearing account, and they can only be used for basically bricks and mortar. So the construction and the engineering associated with that construction. And if you don't spend it within a certain time period, it needs to be refunded as well. So that's, the basis of the law is, again, pretty strict, and it's really there to protect the people who do pay the impact fee. Regarding the concept of the ability to go lower than the fee that we have projected here, you always have that possibility. Now, the offsetting difference of that is then your existing taxpayers bear more of a share. So that's sort of the, the balance. And it's sort of, again, the balance is, do you want to encourage development? Because it helps taxpayers in lots of other ways. And so there's a whole bunch of things that you will have to decide as the governing body. That said, the impact fees here, we followed the same sort of methodology as we did, particularly with fire, or with police, because in both cases, there's a protection of persons and a protection of property sort of analysis, and then there's also a split between residential and non-residential use. And so the residential and non-residential split was based on past incident data. That's something that we might look at trying to update. That was, maybe a year or two old at this point. But that also is, again, just one of the building blocks of the assumptions that is in the report. The majority of the information related to the design population and the square footage of the facility are based on that March needs assessment study that was recently completed, and the information was given to me by Bill. And so it's based off of a total project size of 36,109 square feet, and that includes an EMS portion. For the purpose of this impact fee, we're pulling out the EMS portion and just charging fire as well. We have a cost per square foot based on management's discussion as it relates to consulting with your designers and architects on the facility and the space needs study of approximately $200 per square foot, which is also reasonable with what I've seen with other communities. So based on those assumptions, we have a residential calculation. So this would be per household, single family home, of approximately $310 per unit. And then for multifamily, it would be $213 per unit. And residential would be 96 cents per thousand valuation. So those numbers are all lower than your police impact fee, for example. Most fire impact fees that I've done, particularly in this area and then also down towards the Milwaukee area, run about $450 per single family home. The reason why this is a little bit lower is we've got a very large design population here. You also have the ability to have more non-residential growth than some other communities as well. So those are probably the two factors that play into that. Again, I think it's fairly conservative, but if the size of your facility ends up being 30,000 square feet and the cost to construct that ends up at $175, well then you're probably going to have a delta where we're going to have to refund a bit of money back to the current homeowners. Questions?
Are there any questions or comments for Ms. Helmbrecht? The one question that I have, and I know that we were talking about this when there were two towns for a while in the Fire District Commission, and you had indicated that per our agreement, the town would have to consider an impact fee as well. Is it still allowable that if the town did not impose the impact fee, that they could pay that same amount from their general fund?
Yes.
So they could do that?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments? Mr. Burns?
Yeah, if I could just comment about a couple things to consider. One, the longer that we would wait to consider an impact fee, we'll have more specific information on the size of the facility and the cost of the facility. The flip side on that is we're potentially missing out on new development that would be taking place over the next several months and the opportunity to collect fees off of that development. When this was discussed previously at the Fire District Commission level, one of the thoughts was, you try to use reasonable assumptions, try to be conservative, but potentially if there's a concern, what if the fee is too high, is that you would initially phase the fee at a certain percentage, and then you could come back upon completion of the facility or at bidding of the facility when you have more specific numbers, and then maybe make the next adjustment. So that's something that you consider when you're looking at the timing and options for the fee. I think the next major step would be the preparation of that needs assessment report. But before we direct Baker Tilly to proceed with doing that, I think we wanted to have this discussion and see where people are at, where the comfort level is, and do we want to see changes that would go into that, what that needs assessment report would include.
Questions or comments from the council? I mean, my personal opinion is, and we've talked about an impact fee for a number of years, but because of a number of things that were going on, we couldn't impose the fee. But the former councils were very supportive of imposing an impact fee. I would encourage the council to consider it. I would encourage you tonight to provide the authorization so that the needs assessment could be done, and that it could come back to the council and we could consider it as an early date as possible. We are seeing development in the city, and the longer that we wait, we are losing out on some of those revenues from the impact fee if it were imposed. So I believe that it makes sense that some of the new development as well helps fund some of that. So I'm very supportive of moving forward with an impact fee. Other thoughts, comments from the council, or proposed action?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms.
Does
Ricky.
the town make a separate approval from the city?
Mr. Burns?
Yeah, my understanding is that if the town wanted to impose an impact fee, they would have a separate proposal, their own ordinance that they would be adopting, approving that impact fee for the town. When the dissolution and the service agreement was put in place for the current fire district, there is language that says that if the city adopts an impact fee, the town is responsible for collecting that cost and paying it to the city. So it's up to them, as the mayor had asked, that they could impose the impact fee and collect it from new development in the town and pay that in, or if they would choose to, that they could pay that from their general fund or other sources, but somehow they need to accommodate for growth in the town.
Further questions or comments? Questions or comments? Potential action? If we don't have action this evening, it would certainly be on an agenda that we could consider it at a later date. But again, I'm encouraging the council that we do move forward with this. I think it makes a lot of sense for so many reasons. Mr. Diaz?
I just have a question. Is this is different than a fire protection fee?
Yes.
Mr. Burns?
Yes, it would be. This is something that would be collected with a building permit when a new facility is constructed, and it would pay for the cost of that development's share of the cost of the facility, whereas a fire protection or fire service fee, I believe, is something that you would charge based on usage. Some communities in some areas will have a charge if there's a fire call at a business, and then they charge for that. So this would be separate from that. It's not paying for the operation, it's paying for a share of the capital cost of the facility.
Thank you. There's some legislation before the state government about fire protection fees amongst other things, so I just wanted to be absolutely sure.
Other questions, comments? Potential action? Ms. Doyle?
So are you looking for a motion to authorize further
The needs
report on this
assessment?
then? Yep.
The needs assessment?
Yep.
And then it would be brought back, we could either have it go through the finance committee to the council or directly to the full council. That makes no difference to me how we would handle that. I mean, it's an issue that eventually will come to the council. I don't see a problem with it going directly to the council.
And if we make a motion for the needs assessment, we could still explore the option that you were referring to, Bill, about possibly having a certain percentage and then reevaluating that at a later date.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
All right.
that's my understanding, that the needs assessment would document what the maximum fee you can charge is based on the assumptions, but you'd have the ability to implement it in phases however you would choose.
Okay, well then I'd like to make a motion for the needs assessment to go forward.
We have a motion by Ms. Doyle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Diaz. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Next, thank you, Ms. Helmbrand, for your information this evening. We look forward to the needs assessment. Next, we have discussion and possible action regarding potential purchase of property at 102 East Park Lane. Mr. Burns, do you have any background on this? Mr. Burns?
Yeah, the council has previously discussed the potential purchase of this property, which is located in the downtown in an area that's been identified in the TIF plan and prior studies as an area for potential redevelopment. At this point, we would ask that the council consider convening in closed session to discuss specifics related to a potential offer or potential discussions of a purchase price for that property.
You have heard the recommendation from Mr. Burns to go into closed session. Questions, comments, or any potential motion? Mr. Diaz?
In your opinion, would it cost the city money if we stayed in open session to discuss this issue?
Mr. Burns?
I think there is the potential that could be a cost to the city if we were to discuss in an open session. It is a potential competitive or negotiation issue, and so having the ability to discuss in closed session authorization for room to negotiate, I think, would be appropriate. I think failure to do that basically displays the city's hand and could ultimately increase the price of the property.
Questions, comments, potential motions? Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the sake of conversation and moving this forward, I would make a motion to go into closed session. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The Common Council may reconvene in open session to take action on the closed session item.
And Mr. McGilvray, you made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Ms. Doyle. A motion to go into closed session requires a roll call vote. Ms. Lynch, if you'd read the roll, please.
Alderperson Bear,
Yes.
Alderperson Diaz,
Yes.
Alderperson Doyle,
Aye.
Alderperson McGilvray,
Aye.
Alderperson Reekie, Alderperson Steiner,
Aye.
and Alderperson Yurs.
The roll call vote is unanimous. We are in closed session at 7:56. We will reconvene in open session, and per the Wisconsin state statutes, we will only discuss the item that's listed on the agenda. Nothing else is allowable to discuss in closed session. We are back in open session. I will ask Attorney Kleinmeyer, the council's legal counsel, if he would provide a statement on the discussion in the closed session. Mr. Kleinmeyer, please.
Sure. The Common Council has authorized city staff to prepare and make an offer to purchase the property on Park Lane. Alderperson Steiner asked me to identify the fact that he was not in favor of moving forward with the authorization for the offer to purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Kleinmeyer. That concludes any discussion from the closed session. Next, we are under new business. Do we have operator licenses this evening?
Yes, we do. I distributed a list at the beginning of the meeting to each of you. Most of these are renewals for the July 1 start, and there are a couple new ones on here as well.
You have the list before you. Is there any proposed action this evening? Do you have any proposed action on the operator's licenses this evening, Mr. Yurs?
I move to approve the operator licenses.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Reekie. Any questions on the operator's licenses? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the operator's licenses signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Ms. Lynch, is that it then for operator's license? Thank you. Next, we have discussion and possible action, report from Council President. Mr. McGilvray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to address the body from the podium, so I'll be stepping down.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, body. 2 weeks ago, the city had its regularly scheduled meeting of the council. As you all know, I could not be at that meeting. What you may not know is that I requested that the mayor postpone an item that was on that agenda. That is not something I would normally do, but I felt this item was particularly important and I wanted an opportunity to address this body before a decision was made. The mayor declined on the grounds that he did not want to appear that I or anyone else was trying to obstruct the process. I respectfully disagreed. It's within his right to do that. The agenda moved forward, and we're here today. For the public record, I want it known that I'm not happy to be here in this capacity tonight. I'll start by saying I find it disingenuous that some of you have repeatedly taken the opportunity to talk about the concept of an open and honest government. What was done for me on June 10th was many things, but I certainly did not feel that it was open. As a duly elected representative on this body, I cannot, nor will I, sit back and by my silence condone what I find to be unacceptable behavior. It could very well be that it was well, your lack of respect for the process, the candidates, and then city in general is truly worrisome to me. Perhaps it's just a general lack of experience that led those of you who supported Mr. Bear to think it was appropriate to empower him with the knowledge that he had your votes. That's not how an open, honest process works. It will forever remain a mystery as to whether Mr. Bear called each and every one of you after he got off the phone with the mayor the first time, or one of you called on his behalf to gain that knowledge. For the sake of those involved, I'm going to hope that it was Mr. Bear who did the calling. However it went down, it doesn't look or smell like anything that I would want to be associated with. The part of Mr. Bear's interview that I will remember the most were his comments about integrity in government and how important he felt that was. I can tell you from my perspective, this does not look like something resembling integrity. To go from telling the mayor you would like to serve in a capacity, any capacity possible, in order to get to know this city, to telling the mayor that you are not interested in serving at his request on the Plan Commission because you know you have the votes, troubles me. 4 months in the city of Verona, and you have the gall to tell the mayor, the sitting mayor, the duly elected mayor, this is politics. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I'm going to win. I want to be alder. I personally find that attitude offensive. Know that most of you that participated in the process find it acceptable, but I frankly don't see how any of this fits into the mantra that transparency in government took place, since you did it all outside the confines of this room. If you had wanted it to be open and honest about your intentions, if you had wanted to be open and honest about your intentions, I think the appropriate thing for you to do would have been simply to say to the rest of us and the greater community at large that Mr. Bear was the only candidate that need apply. Why waste the time of good intentioned people who have served this community admirably? Why discredit the city by entertaining the sham of an interview and recommendation process? That's what it feels like to me. In an effort to try and understand this reasoning, or the reasoning behind this body's choice of Mr. Bear over other candidates, I watched the June 10th meeting of the Common Council. I watched it several times. I can tell you I saw no substantive reason relevant to the city of Verona behind the decision to elect him. This isn't a knock on you, Mr. Bear. In addition, since all of you weren't at the interview process, I can tell you in the interview process, nothing revealed itself to me that he was the best candidate for the city of Verona. I did know the other candidates. I do know what they've brought to the city over the years. Now, since I was not able to add my voice to the discussion on June 10th, I do have some comments related to what I heard about why you felt it was important that Mr. Bear be elected into this position. And I'll address each of you individually because you all had your individual comments. Ms. Doyle, I do not doubt your commitment to doing the job. I've seen that you work hard and you want to learn. I appreciate that. What I will say is, due to your lack of longevity in this city, you are at a disadvantage in being able to represent accurately the constituents of the Verona and their wants. You come to us from Illinois via Minnesota. You have no historical reference to Verona. That's not your fault, but it is a fact. As you stated in your comments concerning your support of Mr. Bear, you find his broader statewide vision more in line with your own. It is certainly understandable that that is what you would focus on, since neither of you have any historical perspective to draw from as it relates to Verona. My question is, what does his or your broader statewide vision have to do with how Verona should run? I am invested in the city, for the city, not for some broader county, state, or national movement. You stated at the end of the day the body needed to pick the candidate that was best for the city of Verona. For me, that wasn't Mr. Bear. Obviously, for some of you it was. Mr. Diaz, in your comments in support of Mr. Bear, you stated that you were tired of hearing that experience matters. I'll be honest with you. I'm tired of hearing experience doesn't matter. I find it ironic that in your follow-up comment, you state you have a lot of experience with city politics and city planning. Given that you ran for office in Madison before moving here, I'm sure you do have experience.
I never ran for office in Madison.
Fair enough. I'm sure you do have experience. You said you do. Unfortunately, it would appear you're only interested in the experience you bring to the table. You won't listen to what others are offering. If your assessment of me is that I'm not interested in governing with those set of standards, you're right. I don't want anything to do with those politics. It has no place in helping Verona govern. Finally, to your comment about the risk of choosing someone other than Mr. Bear, I would say, what risk to your constituents could you or did you possibly identify that would have precluded your ability to be open-minded about the other candidates? For the record, that's a rhetorical question. There's no risk. Ms. Reekie, you mentioned that you thought Mr. Bear should be allowed to be in an automatic position because he met the criteria of living in the district and showing an interest in serving and working with the people of the district. That is the minimum of requirements. He indeed met those. The problem is, so did the others, and they have greater community connection. I know from our post-interview process that Ms. Reekie was very focused on making sure that if indeed Mr. Bear did not accept the Plan Commission seat, he would get the aldermanic seat for the time being so that he might have the benefit of incumbency when election time came around. What, pray tell, makes you or anyone else think it's appropriate to anoint someone with incumbency in an effort to affect future elections? For me, That's a ridiculous position to take, and I can't support that. Mr. Ures, you represented that you are at every single open meeting, and the one face you always see is Mr. Bear. Well, that's like for the last, 4 months? As someone who has been participating in this process for slightly longer than you, I can promise you that there are many people's faces I have seen at many meetings well before you were ever involved. Mr. Bear, however well-intentioned, doesn't own one of those faces that I've seen in this community over the years. If participation was a contributing factor in your decision-making process, it cannot have been as important as you would like to represent. As I told you a couple of months ago when you became offended by Mr. Charles and his comments, you might want to try walking in our shoes a bit before you get offended. As I told you, I started on this council when you were a sophomore in high school. I was 40 years old. I'd lived here for 4 years. This is my wife's hometown. We had a mortgage, 3 children. That's where I started. That's where I cut my teeth at the council. You went off to college and became a constitutional scholar, and now, 9 years later, at 24, you're back home and ready to serve Verona, and I say, I applaud you. That's great. That I would hope more people would offer to do the same thing. However, it does strike me as odd that the one new person on this council who has repeatedly brought up the importance of Verona's living history, you would so willingly disregard the lengthy history of service the other 3 candidates brought to the table. History is made by people and held only obliquely by those objects that help us remember the people and their contributions. I certainly appreciate your passion for the history of our churches, our cemeteries, and various memorials. But for me, they pale in comparison to the actual service done by the people who made Verona such a good place to live. The vote on June 10th was a smack in the face to all those people who served the city in the past, whether you realize it or not. All that being said, as Mr. Diaz indicated in his comments, you all are the duly elected representatives of the city of Verona. I think it's important at this time and relevant to remind you that as such, you don't just represent the constituents that elected you, you represent the entire city. You should be taking that body of representation into consideration when you are making your decisions. Currently, I don't think that's being done. I want to make this point very clear. Yes, you won. You won with an average of 14.8% of the eligible voters supporting you. That means 85.2% chose to not actively support you. They either chose to stay home because they were happy with the city and its services, or they were happy with the incumbents and their performance, or possibly they were simply apathetic about the process of governing a city. One of you at one point during the debate session said that you were apathetic before someone engaged you. You can continue to deny the presence of outside influence in the outcome of our previous election cycle if you wish, but the facts are what they are. I took the time to request a copy of your campaign donation forms. Ms. Doyle, you received 17% of your money from people who live in the city. Mr. Diaz, you received 30%. Ms. Reiki, you received 33%. Mr. Ures, you won. You received 39%. The rest came from outside the city. As I said, you can continue to deny any outside influence if you wish. The fact remains, and this is not necessarily an indictment of you, this is more an indictment of the people who may have engaged you. The fact remains Joe Parisi, the Dane County Executive, Erica Hotchkiss, our Dane County Supervisor, Sandy Pope Roberts, and Diane Hesselbein, our state representatives, not just yours, our. All work to support you in your campaigns in an effort to unseat a quality group of duly elected city officials. I have a real problem with county and state government reaching down into this community in order to take control of our quality of life. They already have the authority to enact laws and regulations which we have to abide by. They should not be injecting their dysfunctional brand of partisan politics into our city. They too were elected to represent all of us, City governance is about the quality of life and service to community, not political affiliation. It's not blue, it's not red. Today, it's orange because Verona's orange. In closing, let me say I have a great number of people come up to me and ask me what is going on with the Common Council. The answer can be found in your mirrors at home. 4 months ago, this city was functioning at a high level of efficiency and fairness and respect. I didn't agree with all those people. I still don't agree with all those people. That cannot be said now, though, as far as the efficiency and respect goes. Only one thing has changed in the subsequent months. Our staff has remained superb and supportive. The economy hasn't tanked. And the policies we currently govern under have not yet changed. The only real change has been how you, as newly elected officials, have chosen to conduct yourself in the public forum. You and your voting bloc, as Mr. Ures likes to refer to it as, you own it. Stop pretending it. I'm not the one. Start representing the entire city. That's what I would ask. And as I said, it wasn't easy for me to come up here and do this because I know I have to sit here for the next 9 months likely and work with you and try to work with you and make sure that the city continues to grow and prosper and function well. I would hope that we can move forward from where we are now and find a way to continue to do that. I thank you all for your time. You certainly didn't have to listen. I thank the mayor for putting me on the agenda, and I thank the city for listening. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. That brings us to agenda item number 13, which is
Can we
Go.
get discussion on that item?
Certainly, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to address a couple things that were said. And first of all, I want to say that I'm excited about this opportunity and very happy to have been sworn in this evening. And I appreciate the support of the 5 who supported me 2 weeks ago. And I would say to Mr. McGilvray that we had a chance to talk briefly after the interview, and what you said to me was, great interview. Those were words out of your mouth. And thereafter, you said it'll forever remain a mystery about who did the calling afterwards. And I can't speak for everybody else, but I called the members that I called. I called Ms. Reiki, I called Ms. Doyle, I called Mr. Ures, I spoke with Mr. Diaz the day afterwards. And you had the opportunity to talk to me. I emailed you and I said, if you'd like to meet with me beforehand, which is the same offer that I gave all of the members, and no response. So, I offered you that chance to get to know me and to talk further about my experiences, which I feel like haven't been given any sort of respect, at least not to the level that I think that they deserve. I served for a number of years as a public servant, worked for a United States Senator representing this state. And for some of the comments that were made to say that I have no experience that's valuable, that is offensive, actually. That I think is useful experience. I was working on behalf of the people of this state, working on issues that are important to this city, important to every city. And I do appreciate the comments from Ms. Doyle about a similar worldview, and I think that that's something that's important. What I absolutely won't tolerate is questioning of my integrity. And I hold myself to a very high standard. I always have and will continue to do so. I'm happy to have been appointed to the Ethics Board. I think there's some work that we can do on making this a more open and honest government. I think that there are things that we as members can do. I attended Ms. Doyle's listening session this past Saturday. I think that that's a great way to engage the community and show that we care about what's happening. And to question my integrity, it does not sit well with me. There was nothing, no laws violated. There was nothing immoral about what I did. In fact, I think I improved the process by talking to the members that wanted to talk to me, by giving them the materials that I sent to the mayor, by giving the materials I sent to Mr. Burns. And I don't think that there was a sham made of the process at all. I think that it was a process that certainly could be improved. One of the first questions I had when this seat was open is, what is the process? And I talked with the mayor about that, talked with Mr. Burns briefly about that. And I think it's something that we as a council could work on improving. We could work on writing something into ordinances that makes sense, that follows a process that we're all comfortable with. As it was explained to me, this was a decision of the council. So it only seemed natural to me to talk to those who were making that decision. And, you know, I was happy to attend the interview, and as you said, it was great. And again, on my experience, I now work as a full-time advocate for poor people across the state. And we work with all levels of government. We work with city councils, county boards. We work extensively with the state legislature. I know how this process works. I know how politics works. I know how these things are often decided behind closed doors, but that wasn't the case here. There was a long debate at the meeting 2 weeks ago. There was an interview process, and I think that my talking on my own behalf to members of this council is perfectly within the bounds of the law and within the process that was set up. So questioning my integrity doesn't sit well with me, and I won't tolerate that. And you know, I'd like to say that as a member who's been here for so long, I respect that, I appreciate that, and I hope to learn from you. And I hope that you will certainly help me and the rest of us through this process of learning the city, learning how to be a good, open, honest government. And you know, I know that you weren't there. I appreciate that you now had the opportunity to explain yourself, but my hope would be that you and the other members who have experience would be helping us and not scolding us. So, thank you.
Mr. Diaz?
First off, I would just like to thank you for airing your concerns. I believe you. I don't necessarily like confrontation either, but it's really important to get stuff out in the open. I kind of wish I had been aware of some of your concerns before we voted, or even potentially the vote being delayed for 2 weeks. And there are some things I do wish that the process had been more strongly defined at the beginning, and this is something I should have spoken up about. My assumptions, I had certain assumptions about how the process would work. I assumed all the candidates would at least give me a courtesy email, and some people have explained to me that they had the exact opposite expectation, that they shouldn't contact anyone on the council, which that was really surprising for me to hear, because I thought they made a deliberate decision not to contact me. I would disagree that about the trust issue. There's a lot of stuff happening in the 3rd district, a lot of stuff related to downtown planning that affects myself and Alder Steiner's district way more than it affects a lot of other districts. And I want to do right by my constituents, and some of that means being able to talk to my colleagues and convince them to do the things that are in the best interest of my constituents. And I worry that people aren't going to listen to me. When the experience argument is hammered over and over and over again, that makes me worried that when I come to somebody, I'm like, well, I'm not in this committee. Some of my neighbors, some of my constituents have concerns, and I want to pass those concerns along. I worry that I'm not going to be taken seriously by certain people, and that would impact my ability to be a good representative. So those are kind of my main concerns. And just one other thing, like, if you're looking to persuade me, the experience argument, there's got to be something else there. I mean, I won't say it's completely unimportant, but it's only one smaller piece of the puzzle. And then I guess speaking to campaign donations, my biggest donor was my dad, who's from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and he's not from Verona. But I think that was more just because he wanted to support me, as opposed to him having any nefarious interest in the city of Verona. He's a factory worker. He's not a developer or any other kind of big shot. So I guess I would also echo, maybe we need to have the process more clearly defined in the future, and I will definitely say my expectations and assumptions up front. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Doyle?
I would just like to clarify that I didn't say that Mike necessarily shared my statewide vision, just that he has a broader statewide view of events, which I think in respect to him speaking to ordinances and kind of with our issues in dealing with statutes and kind of figuring out these processes, that he would be an incredible asset to this council, and I still believe that. I also would like to clarify that I did not have my mind made up. I would not have hired a babysitter to participate in the interview process if I had my mind made up before this even started. I wanted to be a part of the process and speak my piece, and after going through the interviews, this was my conclusion. And as far as campaigning and donations, as Mr. Diaz said, I had numerous donations from friends and family, which, yes, because of my history, are from Illinois, Minnesota, and Madison and different parts of Wisconsin. You know, I would not have given up countless weekends with my family campaigning if I thought that I was just some cog in a big political machine. I truly believe that this is a fantastic community, wanted to participate, and it's continued. You know, I keep saying that it's not that Verona isn't already a great community, but I want to help make sure that it includes all residents. And I believe that as a newer resident, and other newer residents deserve to be included in that vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Ricky?
I'm shaking with adrenaline because I'm just nervous about the future of Verona, and I guess I really wish there had only been one candidate, and one of the four of the people that came to interview, because they were all such high quality that I seriously would be completely comfortable having any of them next to me as an alder in my district. I would have no qualms about that. I listened to them all in their interviews, and I just still didn't have a feel for the idea that the other three candidates were as like-minded with me. And I guess when I think of who voted for me to represent them, and now I had this opportunity to essentially choose someone that I think is like-minded with me. I think I have proof via the interview and conversations that I've had with Mike that he has my same values and sort of worldview, and I felt like that was why I was most comfortable with him, even after the interviews. And but again, all of the people were of very high quality, and I expect I have a meeting scheduled with Patrick Lytle in the middle of July, because I do want to draw on his experience and make sure that I don't lose that great contact, and I'd like to, meet with everyone again, especially because they're in my district. And yeah, I guess I am very uncomfortable with the process and wish that it kind of went down differently and that my opinion didn't play such a big role. I guess I'd like to improve upon the process for the future in case this ever happens again.
Not seeing any other hands or anyone wishing to speak, so we will move on. We are on agenda item number 13, which is announcements. Do we have any announcements this evening? Mr. Steiner.
Thanks, Mayor. Peter Pan's still in town. The VACT presentation, the first three were very successful, and they have three more coming up this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. If you wish to obtain tickets, it's 845-VACT, or if you want to do it online, it's vact.org. Now, if you do it online and you receive a ticket and you print it off, it's not the ticket to get in the door. You need to go to the will call, turn in your ticket that you printed at home to receive your tickets. We had many people that are using this way of obtaining tickets and were very unhappy when they got to the door and they wouldn't let them in until they went to will call. So I'm making this public now so everyone remembers to take your little ticket that you print at home and go to will call. But Peter Pan is awesome, and I hope you get a chance to see it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Mr. Years?
I just want to announce one more time, I have a listening session coming up tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center on downtown issues. I have invited all members of the council and as well as the mayor. It's been publicly noticed. just so that we don't have the problem with quorum, but no action will be taken. This is just purely to gather information and your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ricky?
I also have a point of clarification with the tickets. You don't have to print them, do you? You can just go to Will Call and state your name and they'll give you your tickets if you order them online. Is that true?
I don't know that.
Oh,
All I
okay.
know is the people that I was with and the few people around us that.
Okay.
You can check into that.
I just wanted to, yeah, clarify that. So, and then I also have upcoming listening sessions that I'm going to take a little more time to prepare for because they're in August 10th in the morning at 9 a.m. and August 13th, which is a Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Also both at the Senior Center. You can come to one or both, but they're the same kind of open listening sessions.
Thank you. Seeing no other announcements, a motion to adjourn would be in order. We have a motion by Mr. Diaz. Is there a second? Second. Second by Ms. Doyle. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.